Chapter 2: Expectations that will go how I want and other foolishness. It's all about me. Being egocentric is definitely something that we're all hardwired to do. It took me lots of practice to separate what my teens would do from my identity. Yet this hardwiring sneaks upon me even now. For example, presently Lark is dating someone that we all love. They're considering marriage. We all love this for them. And then she tells me, in a really long car ride that I couldn't escape from, mind you, that they will be the only two people at their wedding. I cried for days. I haven't told many people this story, but as my best friend, you need to know that life pains are things that still happen regardless of how much you learn or how well you grow. The trick is in understanding what we expect from situations and from our kids. This is the first essential step in fixing your teen. Expectations need to be in check. I thought I'd given up all expectations of her when I made peace with her leaving the church we raised her in. I thought I had given up all expectations when she chose an appearance that wasn't my favorite, made choices that weren't my favorite, and so many other areas this wedding one was hiding from me. Full disclosure, I've dreamed about her wedding for decades. How wonderful it will be, how beautiful she'll look, being with her all day. I won't be there if things play out how they're called to right now, but don't worry, I'm invited to the after party. Yay, what a freak. Here's why this stung. I have this expectation that if you're a good parent, you get an invite to your child's wedding. It's one of those wild life changers that parents typically like to be there for. So, what did I make the idea of not being invited mean about me? That I'm a trash parent. It seems logical. Who do you know that their kid didn't want them at their wedding? Are they psycho? Yeah, that's the only kind of parent without a wedding invite. So crazy, unkind, toxic, terrible me and my husband won't be invited. Ironically, my husband just said, "Sweet, we won't have to pay for it." Sometimes I envy his non-emotional brain. I will never know how he did not take it personally. It's a default that I've been getting really good at turning around in myself. I was such a victim of everything that my kids said and did for way too long. This wedding one was just a sneaky little guy hiding in the closet that sucker punched me out of nowhere. Expectations and making it all about us are huge points that need to be addressed in the process of fixing your teen. There are a lot of confusing crossovers that need to be put back into their proper positions for everyone to be more comfortable. If you've heard the words enmeshment, entanglement, codependency, it's along those lines that I'm getting at. For example, Lark is now an adult. I have very little control and therefore very little space to have expectations. I can choose to help financially and emotionally, invite her to things or help her with things she wants help with. She can have expectations of me in these areas as well. When she was younger, I had more control. I could expect her to follow phone rules, curfew, help around the house, and more. Both are acceptable positions to be in. Our kids do better with a system of loving, safe order. This will and should look different within each family culture and what each individual needs. It should also change with age and development. Expectations on their own aren't the problem. It's what happens when they are or are not met. Let me explain. July 8th, 2018. I have failed as a parent. Lark reminded me of this today as she snapped at me. I asked why she never closed her eyes during prayer, which she didn't. She rudely told me that she was done trying and had already told me 1,000,000 times. I want to die. Only 17, and I failed her. Why couldn't we have been more consistent with prayers, family home evening, and scriptures? How, at such a tender age, can she have a heart that is so hard and cold? Why is she so ruthless towards our family and me? Lark, you are too abrasive. What has a hold of you and how can I free you? My tender feelings are at their end. You are damaging me. On the flip side, Kat got baptized yesterday. It was lovely. She is so special and her spirit is so strong. I thought Lark felt something as I shared my testimony of Jesus Christ. I was clearly wrong. Can you see how my expectations of my kids and my view of myself are so entangled? Her attitude, actions, or inactions of not closing her eyes meant that I failed. Her being rude made me want to die because I took it to mean I had failed and that she was damaging me. Ouch. I've made it all about my feelings and clearly resent her for it. Had I put my expectations and my meanings of them into their proper places, I would have learned what I only more recently know, that she was unhappy and having a hard time. Her behavior was about her headspace. Duh. But I made her hard time all about me, and so I couldn't see her properly through my wounded sense of self. Bestie, if you want to fix your teen, you have to keep your side of the street clean enough to see more clearly what's happening on theirs. This means that you don't expect them to manage your feelings. They can't even do that for themselves. Instead, manage yours and model for them how to do that. They don't need to play along to help you feel good. They don't want to tell you what you want to hear. Be who you think they should be so you can sleep soundly. They aren't emotionally tied to you like that. They want to be them, and that's how they want to be loved, as they are. When you flip it around, do you want to be the partner that your spouse feels is ideal so they can easily love you and be happy? Have a certain physical appearance, maintain the house a specific way, have the same views on finances, careers, church stuff, all the checklists they have? How does that land for you? Wouldn't you rather be honestly seen and loved for who you are, not what they want you to be? Yeah. Expectations are sneaky but profound. I had to own that I was blaming her for my tears, and wrongfully so. Sure, she wasn't always a sweet angel, but I wasn't playing nice either. I was holding my goodness back from her until she'd earned it. I was focused on what I didn't like that she was doing instead of her as a person. She may have been overtly nasty, but my unkindness was just as cruel, flying under the radar. I had to acknowledge how I wanted her to play along and give me her agency to love and accept her fully. This isn't love, and it isn't even nice. Then I had to get rid of those expectations to be able to love her as she was. This is cleaning up your expectations. And this definitely doesn't mean that you have to drop all rules, consequences, and helpful expectations. Our kids need these things to develop properly. It just means unconditional love regardless of sass. It also means when they don't comply, it's not because mom failed. It's just a kid with agency doing their thing. This means growing up. I had to come to terms with my drama. Here are a few examples of what I mean. Them sneaking their phone doesn't mean you don't have phone rules or that you failed to safeguard them. It just means they're a healthy, curious, intelligent teen who wants what they want. Lying to you doesn't mean you failed at teaching them high morals. It means they're normal. When they lose their mind, throw things, yell, or swear, it doesn't mean it's your fault and that you need to yell back or freak out. Their grades aren't because of you, for good or ill. When you separate their behaviors and your values, you can have reasonable consequences without your brain getting all dramatic. It sounds like, bummer you did that. Here's the consequence you knew about. I love you. Want to talk about it or have a grilled cheeser? No drama, mama. It is a beautiful space to live. To be fair, I had been taught growing up that if we do the right things and teach our kids well enough, that they'll love Jesus and do just as he says. Yeah, no. This makes parents feel like failures when they've tried their best, all while their teens still have the agency to do as they please. So her failures were mine because of the lens I'd been handed from my religious upbringing to view the situation. This was a huge area that I needed to do some growing up in. Spiritual maturity is completely separate from all other kinds of growing up. It's hard and personal and just between you and God. It also looks different for each of us. When Lark was 13, we had a hard conversation on spirituality. It was, of course, late at night. Seriously, is it like this at your house too? All the stuff hits the fan after dark when we're tired and our emotional stamina is spent. I could tell that something was wrong. So my husband and I were both in her room trying to help, not knowing what was happening. It turns out she'd snooped and found a little something in our closet. Fuzzy handcuffs. She was all out of sorts. How could we? That was disgusting. I tried to explain the truth to her, that it was a gift we'd received at our annual Christmas party. We'd never use them, but save them to re-gift to the person we'd received them from at the upcoming party. She made us swear to never have sex again. Of course, I lied and promised. I had to calm her down. I had no idea how to deal with her in this emotional moment. It was the worst of many explosions that were far too frequent. Once she'd calmed down a little more, she disclosed what she was really upset about. That she'd never felt the Spirit and that she didn't know if our faith was what she believed in. She also bravely shared that she was terrified to tell us. She feared losing our love if she was honest. That broke my heart. BFF, I am liberal with love. I told her then, and I tell her now, so many times a day, that I love her, how important and special and wonderful she is, because she is. It still wasn't enough for her to fear our rejection if she was honest. Tell your kids you love them no matter what, and stay true to your word. This was long before I'd found coaching or grew up spiritually or emotionally. Fortunately, I'm really proud of how we reacted that evening. Of course, she was questioning her faith, our religion. We reassured her. We knew this was a normal part of growing up, looking at everything, including religion, and choosing for ourselves. This wasn't a problem. We loved and wanted to support her. This was an expectation of ours that was on point, and she felt relieved to hear it. I remember walking away thinking it was overall a good conversation, minus the handcuffs that we did re-gift. No hate if handcuffs are your thing. We followed up with conversations about how the Spirit works, prayer, and all of the other things. As you can see in the not closing your eyes during prayer journal entry, that would have been a few years after Lark disclosed her spiritual struggles, and she wasn't drinking the religious Kool-Aid. The long-term expectation was not met. I'm not so proud of how that July 8th entry depicts me taking it long-term. It's easy to be understanding and patient when you think you can still sway them. When you think that it's just a simple misunderstanding that will correct itself. I had no idea that this was the beginning, not the end. That's another angle to look at expectations. They're easy in the short term, but self-expose us if we don't really back them up in the long term. So many of my clients do the same thing. It's so easy to be chill when it's small and passing, but make it long term, like faith, education, marriage, identity, sexual orientation, political views, and voila, a hidden, painful expectation is lurking in the shadows. Let's look closer at my expectation of everyone loving Jesus, as this is a really common pain point with many parents. As I stated before, I love my religion. It's also flawed. Christ isn't, but institutions are. All of them. They're run by humans who are flawed even when doing their best. Those humans blur the lines between what is pure godliness and how they teach and practice it. I'd been taught that if you raise a child upright, they won't deviate from those teachings. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. It's saying that if you do a good enough job, they'll play along. So when they don't play along, it's now the parent's fault. This is where I and so many other parents lose their minds. We get passive aggressive at best and abusive at worst. We believe that we must control that which is beyond our power, another human, and we pull out all the stops for the sake of their salvation and ours. This leaves a path of destruction and is the opposite of saving anyone. I just want to point out that this doesn't mean we just throw it all out the window and stop teaching, speaking, and modeling what we find virtuous. It's just letting go of that end part. And they'll like it and say, oh, yes, I completely agree, and tell me more. Again, this is a sneaky expectation causing us unnecessary pain. I was also taught that Christ died for us to experience agency. We could repent of our shortcomings, sins, and wounds and be forgiven. That must mean that mistakes and wrong paths are part of the plan, not, oh crap, something has gone terribly wrong, we're all doomed. Which one is right? Option 1, should we dictate our performance as a parent by our children's outcomes? This sets up some pretty high expectations that I beat myself up with and all of my kids up with, and we were bloodied, not for the good of it. As you can see from my journal entry, I wanted to die. No, I wasn't suicidal, but some parents might be. The shame was intense. I cried all the time. What kind of mom was I like that? Less effective, not as loving. I hated being around her. She reminded me of my failings every time I saw her. She taunted me with my inability to control her back into following the rules. She wounded me because my expectation of being a good mom rested solely on her shoulders, and she didn't want to play along. Or option 2, the idea of agency. How does it work that Christ died to atone for the things we choose to repent of? That he loves us so much, he didn't want us to be forced to follow him. Yet, that's what I wanted. To force my lark to do so that I could feel like we were saved, that I'd done a good job. It seemed too good to be true. I could let go of my expectations of her life that I'd dreamed of, even as I held her as a newborn, just to love her. But the dream I wanted for her was too painful to let go of. I loved her imagined life in my mind. I wanted it for her and for me. It was good and righteous, and not getting it hurt so badly, but giving it up was also painful to consider. I felt massive guilt for even contemplating giving that dream up. I would have to embrace things I didn't want to. What I was taught was evil, how she was living. How does one reconcile following Jesus as we're culturally taught and loving unconditionally as Christ actually teaches? It was a confusing spiritual dissonance that I couldn't close. What can't you wrap your head around? Where is your shame hiding? Where is there conflict in your soul? Where are your expectations and how do you interpret how they play out? What kind of parent do you behave like from that place? Pause and be brave. It's hard to look at our whole self. It's hard to own up to our behavior and see how we're wrong, but it's crucial to fixing anything. We have to see it clearly first. I couldn't see that I was adding fuel to the fire by seeing my unmet expectations as a negative reflection of myself, of how I was a mom. It's easy to see our kids as an extension of us without even realizing it. For 40 weeks in the womb, she literally was. For another year, she was also a physical part of me a good deal of the time. Even as a toddler, she was my constant shadow. I know she loved me then. I was her world and she was mine. It was confusing as she grew up, forming her own self, and I struggled to separate that. Chaos ruled in our house for a few years. I'd try to avoid Lark. She'd push my buttons. I would cry. I prayed a lot for her to change her mind, be kind, and love me and Jesus again. Honestly, looking at everything in life, our child, ourself, our beliefs, is difficult to do. Was my child part of me? Was the religion that I loved wrong, flawed, harming us? Courage, I have learned, feels terrible. The reward is after you slay the dragon. Not noticing the dragon in your life, not choosing to acknowledge all parts of it, that's not love or faith. That's fear. I would have told you I loved my daughter entirely had you asked me back then. And I did, but I wasn't loving her, myself, my God, or my family as well when I couldn't see them perfectly, when I didn't sort out whose business was whose, or everyone's expectations and the meanings we all attach to them. Mostly, if we're good enough, lovable, and acceptable, is what we're all looking to find in our parenting, our appearance, accomplishments, cleanliness, kindness. I couldn't be loving to Lark when she was the cause of my suffering, my pain of sucking as a mom. I avoided her. I couldn't be loving toward myself when I enumerated all of my inconsistencies and failures and therefore couldn't be so loving to God or anyone. I was trash. I was a nervous pile of tears and resentment a good deal of the time. Yes, I loved, but conditionally loving was hard. We were both doing this, I'm sure, because the evidence was that she wanted me to change just like what I was doing to her. She wanted me to see things her way, to let her make her life how she wanted, not how I thought she should be. That's why she pushed so hard. It's how we're all hardwired. We want freedom. We want to live and learn, not to be told and learn. We want others to fold into our concept of how things should be, not the other way around. And so her hypothetical upcoming marriage that I'm currently not invited to, I've chosen to drop the expectation and all about me part. Yeah, if it happens as she said, I will be asked why we're not there. I'll have to tell my parents and siblings who adore her why they're not invited, and brace for questions and assumptions of the most uncomfortable kind from others. But here's the bottom line. My fear of looking like the psycho mom who didn't get invited would become the reality of the psycho mom who is there but not wanted if I didn't maintain proper expectation lines. Between the two, I'd rather maintain supporting my daughter as she sees best, keeping it authentic, rather than actually being the controlling parent where her wedding day isn't exactly what she wants. Ouch. Yes, you can make the right decision and still be in pain. That's the thing about expectations. We can keep all of them that we want and feel upset when they don't happen and know that it's exactly right anyway. So yeah, I don't bring up their wedding anymore because that hurts my heart. Also, I let go of her being anything other than her. It's a process that you think you've got, and then something happens, and we find a new place to assess our expectations. I have complete confidence that if I can, you can too. It's all in the skill of telling the difference between what you're in charge of and what they're in charge of. Then own and align your expectations accordingly. For me, I still think parents who aren't trolls should be there for weddings and such. So I will be crushed if I'm not there. And that's on me. Lark is in charge of following her highest self in whatever direction that takes her. She's an adult, and it's her experience to decide. Have I mentioned that we are supposed to feel all the feels yet? Because that's a thing. It's okay and even healthy to feel sadness, joy, hurt, embarrassment, love, and everything in between. Here's more on that in Chapter 3.